Okay, cool. So, hi everybody. Welcome back to the Primas Podcast. Don't mind my guns. It was upper body day yesterday, so I felt, when you feel like really buff, but it doesn't look that way, but you gotta walk like it anyway. I totally did that. So yeah, welcome back to the Primas Podcast. My cousin over there has a little allergies, so she might be a little stuffy. Prima, tell us, how are you doing?
I'm doing much better. Yeah, guys, I just came back from Colorado from visiting Cindy this week, right? Came back on Monday and I came back with really bad allergies. It sounds like I have a smoker's cough. So if you hear me stopping, it's just because I'm trying to gasp for air. But yeah, it's a bad case of allergies for sure. I've gotten tested twice for COVID and everything came back negative. So
Awesome.
thanks,
Thanks
Prima.
for sharing. Yeah.
You should have recorded me on Tuesday when we had our little meeting. That would have been fun, huh?
I would have been down because it's funny. I get that cough too sometimes. I'm going to try to avoid it this winter. I get winter allergies. You got fall allergies from Colorado.
Yeah, because that was my first time like really experiencing fall, which is beautiful. Right? I was tripping out on it. I was like, wow, look at all these trees. You're like, Prima, they're just trees. And I was like, but I've never seen them that color. We don't get that here in LA.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. In Colorado for all the seasons, but this one is, I don't know, it's cute because it's fall. So it's like orange and red.
Yeah. When I was drinking that hot apple cider, it just hit different when the little chill comes in, that little breeze, and like I actually had to wear a scarf for like my beanies,
Yeah.
LA, we don't have that.
I don't like apple cider, so that's always been weird to me that people do.
It's good.
Yeah. When I see it at the store, I'm like, stop selling this stuff. No one likes it. But I guess people do. Because sometimes, people, I'm like, what are you drinking? They're like, apple cider. I'm like, spit it out. Just kidding. Okay. So today, we're going to talk about cancel culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is going to be a good one because especially with the release of like last week's episode, the Halloween one, we could have easily been canceled for that one because we made so many like factual errors. I don't know what we were thinking, right? Like, I don't know if we had smoked before or it was just the high of Halloween, maybe too much sugar rush, but yeah.
I don't really think we made a lot of errors because I always kind of disclaimer, even though people forget, I don't care. I remind them. And I say, you shouldn't listen to us in that way. We are not professionals. Even if we were, I would still say this, that everyone should do their own research on stuff. So yeah, when I make mistakes, I'm always like, well, I'm human, gonna make mistakes. Yeah.
Correct. But this is part of the cancel culture topic. So that's why I feel like we've been building up a lot for this cancel culture topic. I feel like it's been out there in the universe and we kind of didn't see it. But like if we think about emotions, if we think about the last week, like even though it wasn't that many errors, but yeah, we made some, but it's that sense that like we're owning, like when people approach us or give us that critique, So here we are talking about cancel culture. So what inspired you, Prima, for this topic?
Okay, what inspired me was definitely not our Halloween episode or any episode really, because I really preach that people should be brave enough to say what they want in a time where it's so sensitive and you shouldn't say what you want. So a lot of people stay quiet. A lot of people are fake. I feel all of our society and culture is fake. Like no one really presents themselves as their true self. And so, yeah, if I ever make mistakes, I say it all the time. Like I'm not a professional speaker. We're doing this for fun, but also like it's a super awesome thing, like to have a podcast, but we're going to make mistakes. I don't know. I made peace with that a long time ago, not with the podcast, in life, because I do love studying human behavior. And the way that the human brain even learns is through trial and error, is through making mistakes, is through feeling adversity, is through, the stressors that we talk a lot about. Stress is real and it can be very damaging, but it can also be very powerful. It all depends on how you react to whatever's being thrown at you. So what triggered me and I got like so offended was that they finally got to comedy because I feel like comedy, and we hear this all the time, like it should have no rules. It's comedy. Because if one person is going to get offended over someone saying something, a joke, Dave Chappelle, we're talking, he's one of my top favorite comedians. If someone gets offended, it's like, then everyone should, because comedians come at everyone. And I'm just a huge fan of sarcasm. I operate from a place of love, respect, and sarcasm. I like to say, like everything I say, every decision I make, it's pretty much based off of, like
Humor.
or just like I don't look at the world the way that a lot of people do. I'm not saying I'm special and I look at it in a unique way, but I really try to stand on the outside of what the majority is doing. I don't know. I'm like, I don't see the fun in that. So yeah, so they attacked Dave Chappelle. And let me tell you one more thing. I feel like that's cancel culture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
but before we like go into it, I also agree with like the psychology, right? We say this all the time. It's on our IG page. We love the study of human behavior, and that is entailed with our human behavior aspect is making mistakes, making errors, and not only with our actions but with our words. It's called growth, like there was a point in time just a couple of years ago where I'm not really proud of a lot of things, and for that to be like on a microscope or like people just over analyzing it, it's like we've talked about this several times. The past no longer exists. I'm not that person who I was 5 years ago. And for whatever I said or did to make people feel, of course I'm going to own up to it. Of course I'm going to apologize, because I'm like, you know what? I'm in therapy nowadays. I'm going to explain myself. I wasn't in a good place there. And I really want to break down this cancel culture because yeah, it's very prevalent in our society today, and it is fairly a new term. But I mean, we've been canceling people for a while now, right?
Yes, I feel like it started it's been happening, but it made a big boom when Trump was censored on Twitter. That's my personal opinion. I don't know, because my mom, we would debate a lot because I was like, no, they should ban him. I never knew what it would lead to, but whatever. I was naive. I still am,
Wait, you're talking about Trump like 4 years ago, or Trump when this beginning of this year when the whole like Capitol thing erupted?
Yeah, when he got censored, which was when the Capitol thing happened.
Okay, got it.
So I was very much on the side of like, yeah, cancel him. And my mom was like debating, and I just didn't understand her point. And now I do. She says that's where it starts, because someone didn't like what someone said or did, and they erased his voice, or they deleted a form of communication, right? And I'm like, yeah, but he incited violence. And then she was like, yes, but there's a lot of violence on social media, and it's very accessible. Not just violence, there's a lot of crazy shit on there, like child molestation, pornography. There's just it can get really crazy. And so I just didn't think of it that deeply at the time, and now it's starting to make more sense of like, where do you draw the line? The guy from Twitter got offended, and then everybody wanted to maintain the face for the public because we're the consumer. And so they're like, yeah, we're gonna cancel him too. And yeah, so I think that's when it's kind of like blew up. And then after that, like, because that was so supported like that movement, I think a lot of people jumped on like, and they said this and they said that, get them. And then now it's getting out of control, because now anyone that gets offended, which is so crazy, because we're gonna get offended. That's just life. Not everyone is gonna look at life the way we do. So it's just very highly that someone's gonna offend you. And so to me, it's like you're being too entitled to your feelings. Like, you think when you get offended that you're very important, and we're all important.
Correct. We're all like, yeah, we are very all self-centered, it's our world and everyone else is just living in it, like mindset. And I also went going back a little bit to like what you said about the Trump thing. I remember we had that episode, right, on like Capitol Hill. And yeah, that was a couple of months ago, 9 months ago. And we were all for it. And look how our opinion has changed, because now we see what your mom was describing, that was like very wise and like of her to see it then. But we were so honed in that moment because we were so against everything that he stood for, right? Like we're not Trump supporters. So I think that like made our vision blurry to see the bigger picture, which your mom was like essentially trying to paint for you, but we were just honed in. And I think that goes to like the point you made after. It's like we're so we don't know how to step back and to respond, we're so reactive. We're like, nope, nope, nope. And that's what that's what we were talking about in our emotions topic. Is like we're learning how to do that. We're learning how to like step back and think before reacting and to respond in an appropriate way.
Yep. Yeah. So the other it's funny that you say that, because my brother sent me this earlier and he was just like, you guys should talk about this. It says it's just like a quote or whatever. It says, never let anyone recruit you into hating someone who has never wronged you. In other words, we did this a lot growing up as children in the playground. Like, hey, I don't talk to her, so now you can't talk to her. Or I don't F with that person, so you can't F with that person. And the whole cancel culture for me, it just suddenly hit me when it was like, you're not creating solutions. You're not being solutions based. You're creating more division. And we already have divided ourselves a lot as humans. We've divided ourselves in gender. Look at the chaos that we're in.
All the labels, women, sisterhood, what everything means.
Age. We've also something so important.
Sexuality, gender, everything. There's so many labels, and those are the divisions, right, that we're talking about.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is when we judge, we're very judgmental, right, as humans. And we judge people as adults. We're like, oh, there's people are in the streets and they have drug problems. Oh, you're a drug user, or you're a shopaholic. You have an eating disorder. We're so judgmental. And the thing is, we created this division is so powerful from the jump. The moment before we're even born, we already start to dictate a lot of things for our children that aren't even here yet. Society does, we do, our environment. And then we don't question, like you said, we don't step back and say, well, let me try my own thing with it. Or yeah. And so that division leads to unstable adulthoods, which we're all doing, we're all facing. You said, oh, I had a very rough my 20s. We're going to continue to make mistakes in our 30s, in our 40s, and our 50s. So it wasn't a rough patch. We were young. Everyone makes mistakes. And I think we should normalize like true ownership and accountability, but also like mistakes. Those two can coexist. I don't, my brother earlier was saying, so I don't remember what we were talking about. He's like, all right, I'm gonna call you out next time you do that. And I'm like, please do, please call me out. I'm not gonna get offended, but I want to see what you're seeing. Like, to me, it wasn't a mean conversation. We were like joking, but I welcome people to like, call me out. You're not gonna offend me. Or at work, I always tell people, like, give me your honest feedback for the podcast. Not that people are willing to do that. It's so crazy. Like, you ask, like, please give me, I can take it. And now people won't even give you their honest feedback because they're so afraid of what you might think, because we're so afraid, period. We're so afraid of everything, of what people might think of us. And so, but anyways, when I have said, like, give me your honest opinion, I really mean that. I really mean, you're not going to offend me. That's just your perspective. So I'm going to kind of like dissect it, because that's what I would have done regardless. I really like dissecting human behavior. And so, yeah, I think we're so easily offended. And that's why we get the snowflake generation, or in Spanish, it's like generación de cristal, which I was telling you about, which is like a metaphor for we're made of glass, because, we can just break easily. And yeah, so I just want to normalize that we're going to make mistakes. Like, it's just we're going to offend people. It's going to happen.
I was going to say, you made a point that I kind of wanted to go back to, which was we keep labeling ourselves, or like I remember when we took the lifespan of psychology, it talks about, I never had an emphasis on child development, but we did learn about early life, and a lot of little fragments of it, right? Like the span of human life. And I remember in that young age, yeah, we're taught because we're absorbing so much of our environment, right? But as we get older, we kind of need to be more mindful. And I don't think we were given those tools. And it goes back to like our parents, also didn't have that. It's like things so unconscious that were just kind of given to us. But that's why we're questioning it now. And we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to be like, okay, well, I didn't like that aspect of like my childhood, so I'm trying to change this for our daughters, or we're actually going behind the scenes and trying to figure out like, okay, well, why do we do this? Why does that trigger me when Cindy does that? Why does this trigger me when one of my sisters does that? And it's so easy to like point our finger like you were just doing, but it's like we never look back into us like, well, why does that bother me? Why did what you said, like your brother, oh, I'm gonna call you out on that. Well, who's it? Why what you were doing? Why is that bothering him? I would ask that question, Prima, not like, oh yeah, call me out, because
Well, no,
I know you can take it.
I was claiming to be something that I'm like, oh, I don't do that. He's like, yeah, you do. And it's my brother. It's someone that knows me. I'm really close to my brother. So I'm like, let me hear what you got to say then. Call me out next time it happens. It was one of those. It wasn't him caring. It was more like, don't know, you do that. And I'm like, are you serious? Maybe I don't notice, right? Like, call me out. Like that's the nature of that conversation. Because I'm like, no, I really do want to practice staying true to myself.
And I like what you're going to then, okay, then that's like a good way to go about it, because that's what Dave Chappelle did in this whole, like how he's being attacked. He's opening that door for dialogue. And I think with cancel culture, they lock the door, they lock you out, and they throw away the key. Like, we don't want to hear the other end of it. We don't want to hear that. And I think that's big part of this movement. And like what Dave Chappelle's trying to do in a way of like stopping cancel culture, or just like doing something that no one else has done. Because in all my research, when I was like studying for this, I mean, not studying, but like getting ready, preparing for this topic,
you have the rocking music. You're like, notes, highlighters.
Standards like of what I was going to say. So I don't.
Chemistry projects. Why do you have a beaker?
And I think that's something we haven't seen before, because I remember the Kevin Hart one about the Grammys or the Academies, where he had it, and then like this one of these slurs in his stand-up, he didn't even like push back. He's like, I'm done apologizing, I'm done, and I'm just stepping back. So when these people are getting canceled, they're not fighting back. They're just saying, okay, like, I'm stepping back. And we just saw that with like John Gruden, we were talking about, which is the Raiders head coach. He didn't fight back. He just said, I'm resigning. And I'm just like, why would you resign? Like, I didn't understand it. It was an email sent in 2011. Oh, almost, yeah, over 11 years ago. But Dave Chappelle, what I like he's doing, he's like, no, I'm not going to cancel. I'm not going to bend for anyone. And I'm going to open it up for dialogue. Like, let me hear what you guys are saying. And a lot of people are coming out as his allies, right? Even in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, that's a great point. That I was starting to look at both ends, right? Like, let me look at the bigger picture. The people who are canceling psychologically, it's a form of control, which a lot of our behaviors we're finding out are coming from the place. I think it's just a common behavior that we express as adults when we have reactive behaviors, is that we didn't have control as children. And it can all be traced back to childhood. We didn't have control as children. None of us did. I mean, I'd look around and be like, who really truly had a sense of safety and respect and love? Like, no one that I know. And so we know what that leads to, that instability. So as we get older, you know what I mean? Like, we're like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, we don't have the control, so we get upset. And then now we're going to destroy you. Now we don't want no one to go to your shows. We don't want no one. These are examples of celebrities, but it's essentially that thing, right? Because people will dig up people from like 15, 20 years ago saying something, and it's like, no one's that person anymore. You got to give people the opportunity to grow, and you're fighting fire with fire. You're not providing solutions. And why the other side, like Dave Chappelle and them, that have just not Dave Chappelle, but like the other people who kind of like succumb to cancel culture, it's like, why do you care? Why do either people care so much about the other's opinion? And that's just in our behavior, in our nature, because Arthur Schopenhauer, he's like a old ass philosopher. He said that, actually, I have it quoted here. He says, we waste our time pursuing approval from others. Like that's all we live for, because you can argue that consumption, consumerism, material possession, financial gain, all of that we use as humans to create status, right? We're like, oh, well, we live here, or we dress like this, or we behave like this is how we act, and this is our mask in public, or we're obsessed with pleasing the other person, because to the cancel culture people, or let's talk about people who are getting offended with like what they want to be referred to as, right? There, that's a big movement. Like they don't say he or she, like we can no longer assume genders. I get that idea, but
you're talking a lot about like a lot of different ideas. So hold on, Prima. So the first one is the control one that you said when we're kids. And you're right. I'm unpacking that in therapy right now. And my therapist had told me that like the reason why I want so much control in my adult life right now is because I had so little as a child. I didn't have control over what we ate. I didn't have control over the clothes I was given. I didn't have control of the school I went to, the friend, just a bunch of things. And something in that was like a coping mechanism for me. So if you come to my house, you would see how neat and clean everything is. And sometimes it would give me like anxiety when things were not neat and organized the way I left them. And that would trigger me. And so I self-reflected. I said, why do I need to be in control of that? I was holding so tight to this rope that it was only hurting myself. So I'm unpacking that. And you're right, it does stem from our childhood, which most things do. But when I see these kids, or not kids, when I see cancel culture like attacking them, it just reminds me of that Georgina, right? The therapist that we had on our show. It's like that little kid inside them that was so traumatized by something, whatever it was, And I think we've talked about it, like in early elementary. Imagine bullying nowadays, like on social media. I can't even imagine how much more harsher it is for kids in elementary school and middle school to be going through now, like thank goodness we didn't have that in only glamour shots, like that was our bullying. But that's that little kid inside them that never healed at that time, so when I see them, I'm like, oh, I can clearly see their insecurities, whether it be anger, whether it be hate, anything within them. Like you said, they're not spewing like solutions, they're coming from a place that they never healed from. And it's so clear to those who have worked on themselves, who are working on themselves. Like I'm less reactive to be calling someone out and be like, oh, Cindy, like, why did you do that? Or like, oh, that bothers me. Or like, why I don't know, whatever the case. I can't have an example if you have one that I recently done, but I used to be like that. I used to see it a lot when I was drinking. That little kid in me would come out, where I would have my little tantrums, where I would say everything that came to my mind with no filter.
Yeah.
And I'm learning to control that.
Yeah, I think the best measure, I guess, of behavior to me that I found, I have these little gnats, is, so sorry, it's doing it on purpose, where it's just like there's this whole apartment. Anyways, that behavior or true behavior that I've noticed now that I'm an adult, or being in like the workforce and in the world, is the true person of someone, because we're so conditioned to wear masks depending on our environment or who we're around. We don't even notice it. So we don't really notice our behavior as much. As self-aware as we are, there's some things that are like, oh shit, why did I do that? Because that was something that happened even before you can control it. So for me, I see people's real actual behavior when they're under stress. That's when their real comes out, because, and I mean, there's a lot of, psychology around this. So you guys should definitely do your research. That's when someone's true colors. And if you think about it, like I started to really make the dots with everybody I know. I'm like, oh shit, that's who they really are. They haven't been able to gain control. Sorry. They haven't been able to get control of their horse, right? Or like of their emotions. And yeah, that's why we're so anyways, I was saying that because you're like, give me an example of me. Like, well, it would be an example of you under stress. How do you react under stress? And this is for anybody listening. Think about how do you when we say stress, we're not talking about, oh no, I have this bill to pay. No. I'm talking about you got up early and you didn't go to sleep early enough, so you're tired. That's going to create a very stressful day for you. A lot of people don't have good sleeping habits. If you're in pain for whatever reason, right? You have a bad back, something's going on. That's also going to lead you to a more stressful day. So there's a lot of little things that we don't consider stress that are stressful with our kids. When our kids aren't doing what we want, we get upset, and we're doing the same thing because we don't have to get upset. And you know what I mean? And so like kids can trigger stress. There's so many different things that can trigger stress. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because we all put on a front. We all were like, no, we're good. We're fine. Everything's good. Like, no, none of us are fine. We're all just trying to cope.
And we're seeing it in this cancel culture. Like, yeah, I'm still going to make mistakes. Even though I'm in therapy, that doesn't make me the best person that I want to be today. But I know I'm moving in a step forward, that I'm no longer going to be that Jess that I don't want to be, you know? I see myself being this person, and I'm putting work to it, because I'm not just going to say like, well, I'm a good person and that's it. And then you're lying. We all need to put in that work within ourselves. And in this cancel culture, that's what I'm seeing. All these people who are these little kids who were traumatized in I don't know what shape, way, or form, that are now coming out as an adult, where they cannot take harsh comments, where words literally mean violence to them. And it's just like, that's freedom of speech. We're allowed to have an open dialogue of difference of opinion. And you know, when we had your friend Sam on for the abortions topic, and that was a good one, right? We knew it was going to be controversial. We knew we weren't, no one was going to agree with us 105%. We were going to have disagreements. But I like what he said. He said, essentially, if you break down, or if you're having this dialogue with someone that you don't agree on one aspect with, but you agree with 75% of the other time, that's more than half the time you agree with someone. But because of that 25%, that 1/4, you're going to hate them. You're going to call them these terrible things because one time they said something that offended you. Like, you know, I at this time I would ask, like, where is that within you that you got so offended, you know, because only you know the answer. Just because I said those words were never my intention to bring that out of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. We are agreeable by nature. We will agree with others to get along with others. And there's also, and I didn't look into it, but there's also mob psychology. And that explains and breaks down when someone takes a side. And when I say division, remember when COVID started and everybody started asking, like, do you believe in it or do you not? That created division, right? Because it's like, you couldn't say shit. People were going to someone on one side was going to get offended. And it's like, I was just looking at it like, this is chaos. This is going to create neurotic behavior, because that doesn't make sense for you to pick a side. And then if you don't pick a side, there's no gray area. And it's like, that's not human behavior. That goes against our nature. But as humans, we're primitive, right? So we're like, nope, this is how we're going to do it. And then people started asking, what do you believe about the vaccine? That created division. Are you getting vaccinated? Now it's, are you getting your booster? There's everything you can possibly think of now is like, where do you stand on this? And depending on where you stand, being conditional, depending on where you stand, I will decide if I'm going to be cool with you or not. And that again is, to me, entitlement, because it's like, I don't know anyone that I'm 100% cool with. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. I like to practice unconditional acceptance of anybody, of my nature, of my daughter, of anybody that I love and respect, even strangers.
Your community, essentially.
Because it's not like I'm just stressing myself out, like, oh, you said this, I don't appreciate that, and I'm offended. Like, it's not a good state of mind to care so much what other people think. It's not natural. You're gonna get offended. Like, that's what I keep coming back to. Like, we have to build stronger mentalities. I love that. Okay, so another quote that's really cool about Arthur Schopenhauer is he said, we'll feel better if we are physically and mentally healthy, and we would need to focus on ourselves to get there. Instead, we focus on others. And then also cheerfulness isn't a positive emotion, but rather a state of little pain. So he was a pessimist, so that's his style. But I like it because he's saying you're not always going to be. Did you hear that?
Yes. What the heck
Rude.
was that?
Cancel. My neighbors. So disrespectful and offensive. He's saying that we live like in a horrible world. We're always suffering. So he's a pessimist. But what he's saying is it's not always going to be happy. It's not always going to be good. We don't live look at our life, big picture. We have to work. We're kind of like in the rat race. Like it's really hard to get out of the rat race. There's so many distractions. I think that's the new. Remember in 1984 where everybody's controlled, right? Everybody has their schedules, and so that they don't think outside or they're not them. So that's one example of keeping you away from who you truly are, because you can't think for yourself. They're constantly, interrupting you and whatever. And then in our American culture here, it's distractions. To me, it's the same difference. We have unlimited access through our phones now. It's the dopamine levels that we reach and why we're so addicted to our phones is also keeping us away. So look at the two differences. All the freedom that we have. Yeah.
I don't get that point. Can you go back a little bit, please?
Yeah. What point?
Like, why did you bring from his comment to the phones, from where we're focusing outward instead of inward? Then how did you bring it to the phone?
I guess
you're talking very fast right there.
Sorry. I guess I'm trying to say that we are not connecting with ourselves, and that's why we don't connect with others, because we're so fragile because we have so many distractions. So both in the book and with our phone, it's creating the same outcome of we're too distracted to focus on ourselves. So everything is outward.
Oh, that's a good point. I like that. And it's even easier to just put up our phone and be like, Cindy, I hate you, than to look. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it is so hard. Like, I've been in therapy for 15 months and it's still hard for me to own up to some stuff, that who I was and being mindful of those things. And I'm 31. So you're definitely right, because in my 20s, I wasn't thinking like this. And I think a lot of this like cancel culture, I don't know the age group. I wonder, like, there has to be, right? But I just think it's a lot younger kids, that are being more targeted or being like more vocal about this, because they just like us, we were not given the tools, right? When we were kids on the playground, like, oh, don't play with my friend, or I don't like her, Cindy, so you can't be friends with her, like what you said. And they're like a new generation, right? They're the ones who are now behind the phones that we just see that are not like working on themselves. And that's a good point, Prima.
Well, yes, but I also want to say that I'm not judging the new generation, because that's what we're conditioned to do, is to separate ourselves. Every single kid and child generation, for our lifetime at least, because I don't know what happened before that, no one has ever liked youth. No one. And they're so disrespectful. We're so disrespectful to them, and we're horrible to them. And then we become adults, and it's like, you're a horrible adult. And it's like, yes, we're a product of each other. So my mom likes to sometimes get in her generational hat, and she's like, well, it's because the youth, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, every generation, as soon as they reach your age, say that. Even now I hear 30-year-olds complaining about like the younger generation.
Yeah. And I was just going to say,
that's just always existed.
Yeah. And for the first time though, but I'm finally seeing that, because I never thought that. I was always felt like I was part of the young generation. Like I was always looked down on. And now that I think it has flipped for me, where I'm like, oh shit, I see myself doing that a lot to the younger generation. And you're right. It's a conditional thing. And I'm trying not to do that, but I'm 31. And I think it's been like this. Now I feel like I have the right to say that, but I don't want to do that, So I'm going to choose not to like
Oh, I
roll
didn't
with that.
know. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to say. You know what I mean? Like I 100% identify as a millennial, but is that me? Like, do I wear that like do I tell, you know what I mean? It's not me, but that's our generation. And essentially like we are going to have different perspectives, you know, when it comes to like the generation before us and the generation after. And I think like we need to merge that line, you know, or eventually like erase those lines.
Yes. We need to stop creating division because we already have so much division.
Yeah.
So anytime you're on the side of like, well, men think like this, well, those type of women are like this, well, that's because they're young, or well, you know, whatever judgment that we're making, it's creating division. You're not being a part of the solution. No judgment, but it's just to explain this is why we're in the state that we're in. I wanted to say also that Bruce Lee said this: don't pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a harsh one. And I want to start normalizing, just because it's something that I'm practicing myself, is to embrace pain, to embrace suffering, because they're a part of life. And what we're doing when I keep talking about distractions and being distracted from ourselves, even with American culture or with like how 1984 explains it, we're separating ourselves from ourselves, and then we're not working on ourselves. When I started to do like combat sports, like Muay Thai, they really, really embrace like pain. Like, don't react to pain. Therefore, we're going to instill pain. It's not crazy pain, but I've never in my life, like I wasn't like rough like that. And I appreciate it so much because it's so mental. It's like, you can endure this pain. I'm not doing anything. But because I'm not used to it, my brain goes into shock because I don't have control of my brain under that stressful situation. I've never been in that situation before. So I love that. So I think part of the solutions would be we have to callous our brain. That's what David Goggins says. We have to be prepared for the world that we live in. And if we're complaining, and solutions doesn't happen from victimhood. It just doesn't. And it's so sad, because some people have been victimized. But what I'm saying is, it can also be a mentality. And the cancel culture, it kind of is, right? It's starting to create like a movement. And I'm not judging them. I'm just saying, where's the solutions? We get it. You're upset. What's the solution that you're providing? Because otherwise, you're just doing the same exact thing then. And you're saying, well, you hurt my feelings, so now I'm going to destroy you. Like, okay. Exactly. But again, there's no solution in that. Like, that's creating more division.
Yeah. And like you said, it's fighting fire with fire. And I don't see a solution in that either. And with one of my solutions that I came up with was that, like, it goes back to the thing we were talking about control earlier. Like, we may not have a lot of control, which is why I feel like cancel culture is reacting like that, because they want to have that sense of control, like you said, well, you hurt my feelings, so now I'm gonna make sure I hurt your feelings, so you know what it feels like 10 times worse. So with that, you may not have control, but you have the power to ignore them, to ignore the comments, to ignore who you want to hang out with, what content you want to see or not. So like, remember what we said about agreeing with them 75% of the time, but 25% of the time, if they don't agree with it, we cancel them. And so go back to that. Like, am I okay? Well, I may not agree with them in this aspect, but like, try to respond instead of react. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Think about this belief that they have, that they're so passionate about. And if it's going to make or break your friendship, or if you feel like you have to let it be known and put it out on social media like this, like, let's cancel this person. What are the other 75 that you guys actually do agree on, So that's my solutions. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I have a few more quotes that are a part of my solution that says, don't live in naivetism. I don't know if it's naivism or naivetism. Don't be naive. Mm-hmm. Be prepared and develop a psychological armor to confront the difficult times. And, I think a lot about people who are depressed as adults, or when I've gone through depressive episodes as an adult, and because things aren't going my way. But really what happened was I wasn't prepared. I wasn't mentally prepared to handle it. Now I am. And that's why adversity, when you go through tough times, is sometimes important, because it creates a very special, unique powerful person. We've seen it, right? There's so many stories where our parents, what they endured, like what we're going through a lot all the time. And we are capable of so much, but we don't focus on ourselves. We rather stay in our comfort zone, and our comfort zone makes us not prepared. So therefore, when someone does attack us verbally, whatever, we're so fragile. We are a snowflake generation. And when people talk shit and make fun, it's just like, well, no, we're a product of you caused this, like we're responding to and so are the younger generations. Mm-hmm. They just happen to have a different tool, which is our social media. And so it's new to us. So we're like, no, they're the ones that are the worst. It's like, no, this is how we are collectively, because they'd have better. We would all get along better if we had people modeling respect and true authenticity and true leadership. Where do we see that? Where is that being modeled? That we expect every single generation in the world to come into this world and just get it. Like, why? What? I don't think we talk about that enough, where it's just like every single youth group has revolted to adults. And then they become the adults and they forget that they were young. And then now they attack the younger ones. And so it's better to prepare for times are going to get rough, because it can lead to hard times when you're not prepared. And we see it, right? When people aren't prepared, and it creates a lot of instability for them. And I feel like we're already like unstable from the jump, but we can do it. Like we have the tools. And that's why I'm very optimistic about it, because I think we don't believe in ourselves enough. When we get easily offended by someone else, you don't believe in yourself enough. So you need to work on that, because you should never care what someone thinks about you, or your preferences in who you like romantically, what you like to eat, how you identify. I think that shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like that shouldn't matter to you what other people think about what you're doing. That's us putting too much effort and energy into other people's opinions. And we're obsessed with that. And so I'd like to talk about that. Or I guess we introduced it, like with cancel culture, it's like, you're going to get offended. It's better to just accept it. And that's being unconditional. You're going to be mad at the whole world then, if you're easily offended, or if you're like, well, cancel that person. Like, that's not good for your karma.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a stressor. You see who you really are. These characteristics are in people when they're under this amount of stress, Mm-hmm. And I don't believe in that either. Like, even if someone wronged me once, like, I don't go out of my way and be like, I'm gonna get them back, Mm-hmm. It's just like, I'm gonna pray for them and Jesus will take care of them. I'm just kidding, but it is karma. It is energy.
I say they're dead to me, so just kidding. No, what else? We're almost coming to an end. Yeah, so I think cancel culture is just gross entitlement. It's an enhanced entitlement of, you hurt my feelings, I want the whole world to know, because it's happening on social media mostly, and that's pretty much where it's at. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen with the new Facebook Meta or whatever, where it's creating like a virtual world. And I've heard of Gary Vee like had mentioned a lot of this stuff like a long time ago, and I'm like, and it's finally here. So it's kind of like crazy, because the cancel culture has life because of social media. Mm-hmm. So we're creating new life forms in different spaces. Mm-hmm. Like on social media, people put on a bigger mask. If I put on a mask with you when I'm in person, that's one thing. Now, I mean, you're adding layers to that mask when you're behind your phone.
Yeah. Ooh, we got to talk about that new Facebook. I don't even think I've heard of it. But that's a whole topic. It sounds just came out
today, because Mark Zuckerberg changed the name, and they went into what it is, and I was like, I've heard of this before. Just business people like in on meetings and shit, and being like, get ready for this, get ready for that. And that's another thing, that there's so much happening, so we're all scared. We're already scared as it is, but with things constantly moving, that's creating a lot of emotions for people.
Mm-hmm. It's uncertainty. Mm-hmm. People like certainty. People like to know what's going to happen. And when they don't, but like you said, we got to prepare. This is life. No one knows what's going to happen in the next second or so. It's just, we have to roll with it.
I wanted to also say real quick, I've said this quote before, humans are more interested in having than in being. And that's from the movie Lucy. And it just kind of supports Schopenhauer's view of like how we're so interested. I never made the connection in that, like having things, I'm a minimalist. I'm always like, no, but I never made the connection that having things really is, you're trying to fit in. And I don't know, I did make the connection, but I guess it's like, no, every single thing that you do when you buy something, if it's not obviously something you're just useful, or how you fill your house up, or your possessions, or even your money, it's all for something other than yourself, because we don't need that much to live happily. That's what he's saying. Like real life can happen in a really practical way. And then last but not least, reading also takes you into a different world that helps you connect with yourself, because you're looking at this story from a very unique lens, right? When you read, it's so amazing. Like you get the power to kind of dictate, and the authors that know how to do that is really amazing. You know, like the big authors that they kind of leave you in suspense and you're like, what? Meditation obviously is a different way to connect with yourself, or deep breathing exercises, physical activity, even if it's walking, hiking, swimming, dancing, whatever it is, because there's 3 parts of us. It's like mind, body, and soul. So it's like connecting those, right? And finding different ways to connect those. And then looking at adversity differently, like as a strength, not trying to shield our children from every single thing possible, but rather allowing them to explore for themselves, allowing them to choose for themselves, so that we can have the opposite effect, right? Because our parents didn't allow us to do that. And you were talking about, you didn't get the choice in dressing and food. There's more micro ways of control. That's like the big stuff, right? The more micro is, I don't know, when my child dresses up for school, she looks a little out there because she's a 5-year-old. And I know a lot of parents that use kids' fashion to talk for themselves, right? Or I don't know, there's a lot of little things, you know, that we do in order to fit in. And so we push that onto our kids because we want to feel accepted. And we even use our kids to feel accepted. And it's like, yeah. And then strive to live a meaningful life, not a happy life. And accept the contrast. What does not kill you makes you stronger.
Well said. Good topic on cancel culture.
Yeah, let us know what you guys think of cancel culture, or any solutions that you might have. Open dialogue obviously would be the brave thing to do, is to tell Dave Chappelle, all right, let's talk in front of everybody. Let's make this meaningful. You know, that would be the brave thing to do, is to not to be confrontational, but not to be afraid of confronting situations. So we got to work on being brave. All right. Well, we are done. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Give us feedback, please. If you do have feedback, leave it in our comments. If not, whatever, just keep texting us.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Have a good week. Thanks for tuning in again, everyone. We truly appreciate it. And Primas are out.
Oh no.